Captain Daniel Hughes stood on the command deck of the battleship Eagle, staring out into the vast emptiness of space. The war was over. Humanity had won. The alien coalition, which had once seemed so invincible, was defeated. The stars outside, which had been a backdrop to years of fierce battles, now offered nothing but an eerie silence. For the past 5 years, Hughes had fought relentlessly. From the first encounter with the alien invaders on Earth to the brutal battles in distant star systems, humanity had been pushed to the brink. The human race had never expected such an aggressive force, nor the endless resilience of the alien warriors. But time and again, Hughes led his forces through the darkest moments, emerging victorious. And now, finally, it was over. His mission was clear: ensure that the ceasefire held and broker a lasting peace with the alien queen. That peace would begin with the most unusual and unexpected gesture: the alien queen's offer of a reward to Hughes. It wasn't the kind of reward Hughes had imagined. He had anticipated medals, accolades, or perhaps even an official title for his service. Instead, the queen of the alien coalition, the powerful and enigmatic Queen Seraphine, had announced that Hughes would be given something more personal: an alien woman from a species that had once been the Queen's trusted allies, a woman who had been spared from the chaos of the war. Hughes was skeptical. He had heard of the Queen's strange customs and her unorthodox ways of rewarding loyalty. The Queen had always been a mysterious figure, known for her political cunning and her ability to sway entire species to her side. But giving a woman as a gift was something completely unexpected. Hughes wasn't sure how to feel about it. Was this some sort of token of peace? Or was there something more sinister behind it? Seraphine's transmission came through the ship's speakers. Her voice, though smooth and commanding, carried a tone of finality. "Captain Hughes, your victory has not gone unnoticed. The human race has proven itself worthy of respect. As a token of our appreciation, I offer you a rare gift, one of my own people. You may choose to do with her as you will. She will be your responsibility, and in doing so, you may shape the future of our races." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Hughes standing in silence. He had never expected such an offer. He felt uneasy, not because of the alien woman herself, but because of the implications of Seraphine's words. What did the Queen expect from him in return? As the Eagle approached the location where the Queen's ship waited, Hughes couldn't shake the feeling that this reward was more than just a gesture. It felt like a complicated political move, one that could bind him to the Queen and her empire in ways he didn't fully understand. The air on the ship felt thick as Hughes prepared to meet the woman. His crew, eager for the peace that would follow the end of the war, had little interest in questioning the Queen's decision. They celebrated the victory, looking forward to the end of their service and the beginning of a peaceful era. But Hughes, always the cautious leader, knew better than to take things at face value. He needed to understand why Seraphine had made this offer. And why to him? When the Eagle landed on the Queen's flagship, Hughes was met by her emissaries, alien officers who had remained loyal to Seraphine throughout the war. They escorted him through the massive, sleek corridors of the Queen's vessel, an imposing structure filled with alien technology that was both beautiful and intimidating. The Queen's domain was vast and almost labyrinthine, with shimmering walls and strange lights that seemed to pulse with an energy of their own. At last, Hughes entered the throne room, a grand chamber filled with alien architecture that was both alien and awe-inspiring. In the center of the room stood Queen Seraphine, her regal form draped in silken robes that shimmered with an ethereal light. Her piercing eyes, dark and intelligent, studied Hughes with a calculated gaze. Behind her, standing silently, was the woman. She was tall, with sharp features and long, flowing hair that shimmered like silver in the light. Her eyes, an otherworldly shade of violet, glowed faintly as she observed Hughes from across the room. "Captain Hughes," Seraphine said, her voice carrying an unmistakable authority. "This is Elara, the last of her kind. She comes from the distant planet of Zinthar, a world that was destroyed in the early days of the war. She is a symbol of our peace, a gift to you. She will remain with you under your protection." Hughes glanced at Alara, sensing the weight of Seraphine's words. Alara was more than just a survivor. She was a living representation of everything that had been lost during the war. The destruction of her world, the death of her people, and now her life as a gift from the Queen. Alara stepped forward, her movements graceful and fluid, though there was a guarded expression in her eyes. She was a woman who had lived through unimaginable loss, and Hughes could sense her wariness. This was not a simple gift. It was a complex legacy of a long and brutal conflict. He felt the gravity of the situation settle on him. He had been given a woman as a reward. But this reward came with a heavy burden. Hughes was a soldier, not a diplomat, and certainly not a man who had ever been involved in the political intricacies of alien alliances. Yet here he stood, being thrust into a situation that demanded not just leadership, but an understanding of the delicate balance between peace and power. Seraphine's words echoed in his mind. "You may shape the future of our races." That was a heavy responsibility. Hughes knew that his decision, whatever it might be, would have lasting consequences. The future of humanity's relationship with the alien races, especially the survivors of the war, rested on his shoulders. "Take her," Seraphine said, her voice softer now, as if sensing the tension in the air. "Treat her with honor, Captain. She is not just a symbol of victory. She is a reminder of what we have lost and what we can rebuild." Hughes nodded, though the words didn't ease his uncertainty. He stepped forward, acknowledging Alara with a respectful nod. "I will protect her," he promised, his voice steady, "and I will ensure that the peace we have fought for is kept." As Hughes turned to leave the Queen's ship, Alara following silently behind him, he couldn't shake the feeling that this gift was far from simple.
In a galaxy still scarred by war, peace was never as straightforward as it seemed.
And with Alara by his side, Hughes couldn't help but wonder if the real battle was just beginning. The days following the end of the war were strange for Captain Daniel Hughes. There was a strange silence that settled over the ship, a kind of stillness that was both comforting and unsettling. The crew was adjusting to the idea of peace, but Hughes knew better. Peace had never been simple. It wasn't as easy as signing a treaty or shaking hands. There were always underlying issues, things left unsaid, and misunderstandings that could erupt when least expected. Alara, the alien woman the Queen had given him, stayed mostly to herself. At first, Hughes wasn't sure how to approach her. She was quiet, reserved, and her eyes, which had that strange violet glow, always seemed to be watching him, as if waiting for something. What that something was, Hughes couldn't guess, but he sensed that she was not just a symbol of the victory. She was more than that. She was, in a way, a living reminder of the war, of everything that had been lost and everything that could still be saved. He tried to engage her, to start conversations, but she would often keep her distance, responding only with short, measured words. It was clear that she wasn't eager to speak about herself. And who could blame her? Her world had been destroyed, her people wiped out in the early days of the war. She was the last of her kind, a survivor in a universe that had no place for her anymore. It was hard for Hughes to imagine the pain she must have felt. He could never truly understand what it meant to lose everything. He had fought and lost comrades, but he had never experienced the kind of devastation she had. Her eyes, so full of sorrow and strength, spoke of a history he would never know. One evening, as Hughes stood on the deck of the Eagle, watching the stars slowly drift past, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to find Alara standing there, her figure outlined against the soft glow of the ship's lights. She had come to him, without him needing to ask. "I want to understand," she said, her voice low and careful. "Why did you fight so hard? Why didn't your people just surrender?" Hughes was taken aback by the question. It was a question he had asked himself many times, though never in such direct terms. He thought for a moment, looking out into the vastness of space. "It wasn't just about fighting," he began slowly. "It was about survival. When the aliens first attacked, humanity was not prepared. We had no idea that someone could be so relentless. They didn't just want to conquer. They wanted to wipe us out. It was like they thought of us as nothing." Elara stepped closer, her eyes intense. "And you think they thought of you as nothing because you were weaker? Because you were less than them?" Hughes turned to face her fully, his gaze meeting hers. Her words struck him more than he expected. She wasn't wrong. For years, humans had been seen as inferior, weaker, more primitive. The alien races had dismissed them as insignificant, nothing more than a stepping stone on their path to domination. That belief had fueled the war, and it was that belief that Hughes and his people had fought against. "No," he replied firmly. "I think they thought of us as nothing because we were different, but that doesn't mean we were weak. We didn't fight because we were stronger. We fought because we had something they didn't. A will to survive. A will to protect what was ours." Elara nodded slowly, her violet eyes reflecting something deeper, something Hughes didn't fully understand. "And now the war is over," she said quietly. "But it's not really over, is it?" Hughes sighed, feeling the weight of her words. He had known, deep down, that the end of the war didn't mean the end of everything. Peace was fragile, and the scars of the past ran deep. Trust couldn't be rebuilt in a single day, and understanding couldn't be forced. He had learned that through years of fighting, and now, it seemed, he was being asked to apply that same patience to a new kind of battle. "It's never really over," he said softly, "but we can start again, one step at a time." Elara looked at him for a long moment, as if considering his words. Then she turned and began walking toward the inner chambers of the ship. Hughes watched her go, feeling the mystery of her presence hanging in the air. Over the next few days, Elara became more integrated into the daily life aboard the Eagle. She wasn't exactly part of the crew, but she was always around, quietly observing, absorbing everything. She spent time alone, often in the ship's garden, staring out at the stars, as if searching for something. Hughes noticed her there most mornings, lost in thought, her eyes distant. He wanted to join her, to ask what she was thinking, but every time, he hesitated. What could he say to her? What could he possibly offer? It wasn't until one evening, after a particularly quiet meal, that Elara approached him again. This time she seemed more open, less guarded. "I know you think I don't care," she said, her voice more certain than before, "but I do. I care about what happens next." Hughes was surprised by the rawness in her voice. "What do you mean?" "My people, they were destroyed because of the war, but not just the war itself. The belief that we were inferior, that we didn't matter." She paused, her gaze far away. "I was sent here not just as a token, but as a message, a reminder that nothing is permanent. Our survival doesn't depend on strength alone.
It depends on understanding, on rebuilding what we've lost." Hughes took a moment to digest her words.
Elara wasn't just talking about her people. She was talking about the war, about humanity's role in the galaxy, and about the future they all faced now. There were no simple answers, no easy paths forward. But maybe, just maybe, there was a way to build something new, something different, something that could prevent the mistakes of the past from repeating. Elara turned to him then, her expression serious but not unkind. "I know that you see me as the last of my kind, and that is part of what I am. But I am also a part of what comes next, what we build together. If you truly want peace, then we must work together, not just as humans and aliens, but as two people who have suffered, who have lost, but who still have the will to move forward." Hughes was struck by the weight of her words. He hadn't thought about it like that. He had been so focused on the war, on the battle, on survival, that he had forgotten what came after, what mattered beyond the victory. Peace didn't just mean the end of fighting. It meant building something new, something stronger than the hatred and distrust that had fueled the war. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," Hughes admitted, feeling a lump form in his throat. "I don't know if anyone is." Alara's eyes softened, and she gave him a small, understanding smile. "No one ever is, but we try anyway." The days following their quiet conversations brought a shift in the mood aboard the Eagle. What had once been a ship full of excited and triumphant humans celebrating the end of a long war had now become a place of careful steps and uncertain glances. The peace they had fought so hard to achieve was fragile, and as much as they all longed for it to hold, they couldn't ignore the tensions that lingered just beneath the surface. Captain Daniel Hughes felt the weight of responsibility more than ever. The war had been hard on everyone, and while the victory was a reason to celebrate, it wasn't the kind of victory that meant the end of struggles. The victory had come at a cost. It was one thing to defeat the enemy. It was another to rebuild everything that had been broken. Hughes knew that peace was not simply the absence of war, but the presence of understanding. And that understanding, he feared, might be too difficult to achieve. In the weeks following the Queen's gift, Hughes found himself spending more time with Alara. She was not just a symbol of the past, but also a part of the future. There was something about her quiet strength, her resilience, that made him believe in the possibility of healing. Yet, as much as they had begun to understand each other, there was still a distance, a wall that neither of them could quite break through. Alara, it seemed, was still haunted by the ghosts of her past. Her people had been lost, their civilization destroyed by the war, and although she was the last of her kind, she carried the burden of their history and their survival. Hughes could see it in her eyes, the sadness, the determination, and the weight of responsibility. She wasn't just a woman who had lost everything. She was the last hope for her people's legacy, and that was a heavy mantle to bear. One evening, as Hughes stood in his quarters, staring out at the stars, he was interrupted by a soft knock at the door. He turned, surprised to see Alara standing in the doorway, her violet eyes watching him carefully. She didn't say anything at first, but there was a look in her eyes that told him she wanted to talk. "Come in," Hughes said, gesturing toward the chair across from his desk. "What's on your mind?" Alara stepped into the room and sat down, her posture straight and composed. She seemed distant, lost in thought. Hughes could tell that something was bothering her. It had been like this for days. She was always so composed, but there were moments when the weight of her past would catch up with her, and she would retreat into herself.
"I need to talk to you," Alara said, her voice calm but tinged with an underlying tension. "About the future."
About what comes next. Hughes leaned forward, his attention fully on her.
"I'm listening. I don't know how to move forward," Alara confessed, her voice quieter now. "I don't know what to do with the life I have left."
"My people are gone. My world is gone."
"I've been given a second chance, but I don't know what that means. I don't know what I'm supposed to do." Hughes understood her confusion. He had his own uncertainties about the future, but his were rooted in the larger picture, the rebuilding of humanity, the reestablishing of alliances with other alien races, the difficult task of finding common ground. But Alara's struggles were different. She was alone. She had been cast into a world that had already been devastated by the war. There were no easy answers for her. "I can't pretend to know what you're going through," Hughes said quietly. "But I can tell you this. You don't have to carry this burden alone. We're all trying to figure out what comes next. We're all rebuilding. And that means we do it together. You're not the only one who's lost something." Alara's eyes softened, and for a moment she looked as if she might say something more. But instead she just nodded, her expression unreadable. She wasn't ready to open up fully yet. Hughes knew that, but he also knew that her struggle was a shared one. The war had left scars on everyone, and the peace they sought would only come through understanding and trust, something that was still in the early stages of development. The next few days brought new complications. As the Eagle traveled toward the heart of the Galactic Council, where the final terms of the peace treaty would be decided, tensions began to rise. Among the crew, there were murmurs of doubt. Some of the officers were uneasy about the human-alien alliance, particularly the one that was now symbolized by Hughes's connection to Alara. They had fought alongside him during the war, and while they respected him as their leader, they were uncertain about the future. There were whispers in the halls of the ship, conversations behind closed doors. Some crew members feared that Hughes's relationship with Alara might be seen as a sign of weakness. Others were worried that the peace they had worked so hard to achieve was nothing more than an illusion, something that could be shattered at any moment. But it wasn't just the crew that was uneasy. As Hughes soon discovered, the alien factions were equally suspicious of the treaty. There were those among the alien races who saw humanity as little more than a temporary nuisance, a species that had risen up and fought back when they should have simply submitted. They had underestimated humanity's will to survive, and now that the war was over, there were those who believed that the balance of power had shifted too much in humanity's favor. Hughes received a message from the Galactic Council requesting his presence in a private meeting. It was clear from the tone of the message that the peace talks were not going as smoothly as everyone had hoped. The alien representatives were growing restless, and it seemed that the tenuous agreement they had reached was on the verge of unraveling. When Hughes arrived at the council chambers, he was greeted by the council leaders, who were all present, alien and human alike. There were murmurs of unrest in the room, and the atmosphere felt tense. No one was happy with the situation, and it was clear that the treaty they were all so eager to sign was becoming more difficult to hold together. One of the alien leaders, a reptilian species known for their cold logic and strict adherence to their ancient traditions, spoke first. "Captain Hughes," he began, his voice low and measured, "you may have won the war, but we are not convinced that your people are worthy of the trust required to maintain peace. We are concerned about your alliance with the woman Alara. She is a symbol of your victory, but she is also a symbol of the destruction you have caused. Her people are gone. Her world is destroyed, and now you ask us to believe that your race can be trusted with the peace we have all worked so hard to achieve." Hughes felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He had known that the road to peace would not be easy, but hearing these words made the weight of the situation all the more real. The peace they had won was fragile, and now the very foundation of it was being questioned. "I understand your concerns," Hughes said, his voice steady. "But the past is behind us. We cannot change what has been done. What we can do is look to the future. We can rebuild together, as equals, as partners. The choice is yours. We can continue fighting, or we can find a way to move forward." There was a long silence in the room. The alien leaders exchanged glances, and Hughes could feel the tension hanging in the air. The future of peace, of humanity's place in the galaxy, rested in their hands. Alara's voice echoed in his mind. "We must work together, not just as humans and aliens, but as people who have suffered, who have lost, but who still have the will to move forward." Hughes held his breath, waiting for their response. The room was still, the weight of the decision pressing down on them all. The situation was growing more complicated by the day. Captain Daniel Hughes could feel the weight of the universe pressing on his shoulders as he stood at the helm of the Eagle. Peace was supposed to be the reward for years of conflict, but as the talks dragged on, it became clear that peace would not come easily. The alien factions were still divided, and many still saw humanity as a threat. Despite their victory in the war, Alara, standing silently by his side, had been a constant presence, her calm demeanor masking the turmoil within her. The peace treaty they were all hoping for seemed further away than ever. Every step forward seemed to be met with resistance. The Council, which had once promised to help unite the various alien species, was now struggling to hold itself together, and with each passing day, Hughes could see the cracks forming in the fragile agreement that had been brokered. The moment of truth arrived when the council called for a final meeting to discuss the fate of the treaty. Hughes knew that this meeting would determine the future of not only humanity, but the galaxy as a whole. The fate of the peace, the future of Alara's people, and the alliance they had fought so hard to establish were all hanging by a thread. As the council members gathered in the grand chamber, Hughes took his seat, his heart pounding in his chest. The tension in the room was palpable. The alien representatives from the various factions were present, their faces stern and unreadable. The room was silent as the meeting began. Hughes couldn't help but feel the pressure building. He wasn't just representing humanity anymore. He was representing the hope for a new future. The words he spoke next could either unite the galaxy or send it spiraling back into chaos. "We've come a long way," Hughes began, his voice steady but carrying a weight of its own. "We've fought, we've lost, and we've sacrificed more than we care to remember. But we stand here today with an opportunity, the opportunity to put an end to the endless conflict and build something better, something stronger." There was a murmur of agreement from the human representatives, but the alien leaders remained silent, their eyes cold and calculating. Hughes could feel the unease in the air, the suspicion that lingered just beneath the surface. "One question remains," said the leader of the reptilian faction, his sharp eyes fixed on Hughes. "What guarantees do we have that humanity will honor this peace? You won the war, but we have no reason to believe that you will not turn on us when the opportunity arises." Hughes took a deep breath, steeling himself. He knew this question was coming. He had expected it, but answering it wasn't going to be easy. There were no guarantees in life, no promises that could erase the fears of the past. But he had something stronger than promises, a vision for the future, and a willingness to fight for it. "The only guarantee I can offer is that we are all in this together," Hughes said. "Humanity doesn't want to dominate or destroy. We want to live, to grow, and to work alongside you. The war has shown us that strength comes not from domination, but from unity. We are all capable of creating something better if we choose to work together." The alien leaders exchanged uncertain glances. Hughes could see that his words were having an impact, but it wasn't enough. They wanted more. Something tangible. Something that would prove humanity's commitment to peace. It was then that Alara spoke. Her voice, soft yet filled with conviction, broke the tense silence in the room. "Hughes speaks the truth," she said, standing up beside him. "The war was not a result of human aggression. It was a result of misunderstanding, of distrust. My people were destroyed because we allowed that distrust to fester. We did not reach out to one another. We did not find common ground. And now I stand here as the last of my people. But I do not stand alone. I stand with you, with humanity, because together we have the power to rebuild. Together we have the power to create something new." Her words resonated in the chamber, and for a moment the room seemed to hold its breath. The alien leaders were listening, but they were still hesitant. The scars of war ran deep, and the fear of the unknown was difficult to overcome. The reptilian leader spoke again, his voice filled with skepticism.
"You say unity, but unity requires trust."
"How can we trust you when your history is stained with conflict? How can we trust you when we have lost so much?" Alara's eyes softened as she looked at him, understanding the pain in his words. "I know what it means to lose," she said quietly. "I have lost everything, my world, my people, my home. But I am still here, standing before you, asking for something more, not for myself, but for all of us. If we continue to let the past define us, we will never move forward. If we continue to distrust one another, we will only bring about more suffering. I am the last of my kind, but I am not alone. Together we can ensure that no more worlds are lost, that no more people are forgotten." Her voice rang with the strength of her conviction. She was speaking not just for herself, but for all those who had suffered, all those who had lost. Hughes saw the fire in her eyes, and for the first time he truly understood what she had been carrying all along. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a symbol of hope, a living testament to the possibility of redemption and renewal. The silence in the room stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Then, one by one, the alien leaders began to speak. The tension in the room began to ease, and the coldness that had hung in the air slowly began to dissipate. The discussion that followed was not easy, but it was productive. There were disagreements, but there was also a willingness to listen, to understand, to find common ground. By the time the meeting came to a close, the alien factions had agreed to the terms of the peace treaty. It wasn't perfect, and there were still challenges ahead, but it was a start. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, there was hope. As the council members left the chamber, Hughes and Alara stood together, both exhausted but filled with a sense of accomplishment. They had done it. They had brought the galaxy to the brink of peace. "We did it," Hughes said softly, looking at Alara. "We actually did it." Alara smiled, though there was a sadness in her eyes. "It's not over," she said. "The work is just beginning. But this is the first step, and that's all we can ask for." Hughes nodded, knowing she was right. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, setbacks, and struggles. But for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope. The future was theirs to shape, and together, they would build something stronger, something better. As they walked out of the chamber, side by side, Hughes couldn't help but feel that the peace they had fought for was more than just the absence of war. It was the beginning of something new, a future where humans and aliens could work together, side by side, to create a galaxy that was not defined by its past, but by its potential.